Hello and welcome back to the Real EFL's YouTube channel. Today we're doing something slightly different and it's based around Euro 2024. Charlie and I are both going to be making our own England 11 made purely out of EFL players. Charlie, do you want to run us through the kind of plan for today?
Absolutely. So we have each had to pick 11 players and one manager from each of the EFL leagues. So the way that we're doing it is that we have to have 4 people, not just players, but 4 people from the Championship, 4 from League One, and 4 from League Two. So that's the starting 11 and a manager. We set ourselves a 4-3-3 formation for this as well, just to kind of make it a little bit simple. This is going to be really interesting. We've not actually seen each other's squads yet either, so that's going to make it really interesting. So let's get straight into it.
So I could go first. We'll start with goalkeeper, obviously, and I've gone for Sam Tickle from Wigan, which I think you may go with the same. I think it's a fairly obvious one. He's been unreal for Wigan this year, and has already been he was capped by the under-21s in March. I think he could be a player that, who knows, not maybe even by the next Euros, could be one of those keepers that are knocking on the door. Maybe Pickford and Henderson might be too old, might be getting on, and Tickle could be in that line. He kept a clean sheet in the appearance in March against Luxembourg in a 7-0 win, and I think for Wigan, fans will just be wanting to try and hold on to him this summer. And he's probably one of the best in League One, despite only being, I think he's 22, isn't he?
Yeah, so I've also gone for Sam Tickle. I just feel like he's a very easy player to pick in this because obviously having to pick 4 people from League One, why not get one of those out of the way with a goalkeeper? And yes, Sam Tickle was certainly one of the options. Now he wasn't necessarily going to be my first pick. My first pick was actually going to be Arthur Okonkwo, but we decided for the rules that they have to be playing in the EFL next season, not the season that has just been. And because Arthur Okonkwo technically hasn't signed for an EFL club yet, we couldn't.
Although it is quite highly likely.
It is highly likely, and I probably could have bent the rules, but I didn't. And Sam Tickle's not exactly a bad choice. Instead, he is a top-level goalkeeper. Wigan fans absolutely love him, and for the right reasons. Up until halfway through the season, I think he was on something like 10 goals prevented in League One. Now, although those numbers slightly dipped in the second half of the season, he didn't exactly become bad. Don't get me wrong, I didn't pick him because he got a clean sheet against Luxembourg. I mean, obviously, Ivan's standards are a lot lower than mine, but then again, he is a Carlisle fan, so what do you expect?
Unnecessary dig that was, yeah.
Well, it was unnecessary, but I feel like I still have to get it in at least somewhere in this video. Yeah, Sam Tickle, I think, probably the smartest choice in terms of goal for both of us. We'll give ourselves a little pat on the back for that one.
All right, moving on to right back, and I've dipped into League Two for this. I've gone for Brad Halliday of Bradford. I think especially picking League Two players, you might not have as many options, so I wanted to get one in early. And he's arguably been the most consistent right back in the 4th tier over the last couple of seasons. And he's been a great asset and servant for the club during that time. He's played slightly further up the pitch this season, which has seen him produce 4 goals and 4 assists. But as it's quite hard to pick one in League Two, I just thought Halliday was one that you could kind of shoehorn into the team here. Who have you gone for?
So there's going to be a lot of players on this list for both of us who maybe never make the England squad. But I've gone for one who I think very much could make the England squad in the very near future as well. And that's Leeds United's Archie Gray, obviously playing at right back for the majority of this season for Leeds. I just felt that he was an easy pick at that right back slot. Obviously still so young, wanted seemingly by quite a few Premier League clubs. And it's easy enough to understand why somebody that Leeds United will be desperate to hold on to this year if they are wanting a promotion push, which you'd think with their new investment they certainly would. I just think he's got everything that you want in a fullback / midfielder. Obviously, he plays midfield sometimes as well. He's so calm and composed on the ball and then off the ball as well. He is an absolute workhorse. At such a young age, he seems to have that immense football intelligence. I think you were quite smart, actually, maybe shoehorning a League Two player in at right back. But for me, I just couldn't turn down the opportunity to have Archie Gray in my team.
Yeah, very fair. I may have him coming later on in the video in a position that's not right back, but we'll get onto that in a bit. Next is the two centre halves. I'll do one. Should we do one at a time for this? I suppose that's
Let's do it.
easier.
Yeah.
So first centre half for me is Ronnie Edwards of Peterborough, and I think that this is the easiest pick of the whole squad, and he's one of the more. I mean, I know you've just talked about Archie Gray, but I think he's one of the more likely players to play for the senior side in the future. He's had 10 caps for the under-19s and 30 for the 13, for the under-20s, captaining the latter on a number of occasions. And he's had another great season for Peterborough, although they did fall short just again. And I think we could see him even move into the Premier League this summer. I think his time with Peterborough is up, and they'll get a very good fee for him. So I think it's an easy pick for me for centre half.
Now, it is an easy pick and not one that I've actually gone for. But just before I move on to mine, I very much agree that Ronnie Edwards will probably be moving on to bigger and better things than Peterborough this year. And it's hardly surprising with just how strong he is as a defender, and just how good he has been in League One. He deserves that step up very, very soon. And I remember having a conversation with Keelan, somebody else from the Real EFL, this time last year, actually, having the conversation about how on earth did Peterborough manage to keep hold of Ronnie Edwards. And obviously they did. And obviously they almost reaped the full rewards of that, just missing out on that playoff final again by just a very small margin this time. Not quite an absolute battering at Hillsborough, but we won't bring that up. So my first centre-back pick, I'm dipping into League 2 here. And to be fair, that now makes it 3 from 3 for 3 different leagues for my first 3 players. And I'm going for Fleetwood Town's Brendan Wiredu. Now, again, because we agreed that it's the teams for the following season, then I could go for Fleetwood Town being in League 2. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have picked this man. Now, Brendan Wiredu being the pick is, for me, again, he's somebody else who's got a great future ahead of him. Still so young. Stoke City, I think, were linked with him at one point as well. He's got some fantastic stats in League One for the past season. Over 3,000 minutes. Plenty of goals and assists as well from centre-back, which is impressive. Can step up into that midfield if he needs. Been Fleetwood's captain as well at such a young age. I just think he could be the perfect option in central defence.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good shout. And also, you've used that quite well with the teams that are dropping down, something that I've not done too much of. So I've also gone with a League 2 centre-half for my next one, that being Mickey Demetriou. I think every successful, not just Euro side or national side, but they all need experience at the back. And I think Dimitri's got it in abundance. You look at him, he's been around for what seems like ages. And he's been ever present in that Crewe side who made the playoff final last season. And even though they did lose to Crawley, I still think they surpassed all pre-season expectations and can hold their heads very high. He also possesses a goal threat, much more than most centre-backs. And he's got 10 in all comps last season. Yes, he is 34, but like I said, you need that experienced figure in the dressing room. I mean, you look at England teams of the past when you had your Jordan Hendersons, your Connor Codys, and I think Mickey Demetriou is that man.
Absolutely, he would definitely bring some balance. But I've not gone for him because I've already got one League 2 centre-back and I want to have a little bit of balance. So I've gone total opposite end of the spectrum now for Championship for my second one. And I've gone for a player who, for me, was a pick that I had to take if I had the opportunity, and luckily I did. And that's Jacob Greaves. Now, obviously, the Hull City centre-half has had an outstanding season, couple of seasons now, with the Tigers. And he's already being linked with some big money moves into the Premier League this summer. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he does make one, even though I do think Hull are going to be fighting near the upper echelons of the table for next season. I just think he's just such a solid pick because, to be honest, if he ends up getting that move into the Premier League, and impressing there, he could end up being in one of the England squad in the coming years as well. I mean, all you have to do is look at Jared Bowen. I mean, okay, don't get me wrong, different areas of the pitch, but moving from Hull to a West Ham, for example, impressing well enough to the point where he's coming on in the Euros as he did in the first game, and actually impressed in that sort of 20-minute stint that he came on for as well after coming on for Bukayo Saka. So, yeah, Jacob Greaves for me is my second centre-back option.
And a really good one. And I wholeheartedly agree that he could be one of those players that could break into the squad in the not so distant future. I think for left back, we've probably got the same option here. And I think it's a player that kind of picks himself. I've gone Harrison Burrows to Peterborough. I mean, I've already gone 2 Peterboroughs and I've not got a championship player in at the minute. So you can see where I'm using all of those in what area. He had a standout season, though, for Posh. He made the League One team of the season, 6 goals and 16 assists, including the playoffs. And he's got 12 goals and 18 assists in total for them, which included 2 goals in the EFL Trophy final and that last gasp winner against Wickham, which was pretty incredible. And I know we've already mentioned Keelan, but I don't think that's a day he'll ever forget. He was also Posh's captain for the second half of the season. So I know I already said about Dimitri bringing that leadership characteristics, but Burrows also would bring that. And I also think he's another player that, especially in a position that you look at for England where your left back's not strong. I mean, Kieran Trippier at the minute isn't a left back. Luke Shaw's unfit. I would have included Leif Davis in this if Ipswich hadn't got promoted. But I think Burrows is one of the strongest English left backs probably at the minute, which seems a bit silly to say considering he plays for a League One side.
Yeah, look, exactly that. He was a no-brainer to pick because not only does he fulfill one of the League One player requirements that we kind of set up on ourselves, but he's also good enough to be playing easily in the Championship. And, you know, he's another one that if Peterborough, you know, with Peterborough not going up, they're going to have a real difficulty trying to keep hold of him this window, still at such a young age, but has those leadership qualities that you've said. And his goal and assist output is just incredible. Quite a versatile player as well. He can move the ball up the pitch at quite a quick pace as well, which is really impressive. And you know what? He just deserves to be in this squad, like you say, just for that last winner in that EFL Trophy final, if I'm honest. But look, that is 2 Peterborough players that you have now picked. I mean, you claim that you're a Carlisle fan, but I think you're actually a closeted Posh fan, aren't you?
Well, it's only because they gave us 3 points when we played them away. So I've got to take some small wins. Should we move into midfield?
Let's do it.
So I've gone for Archie Gray in midfield just because I thought that kind of had to put Halliday in at right back. And Gray, I think he's just as good in midfield as he is at right back. Just being 18, he's already a mainstay in Leeds starting lineup. And I think when that next Euros comes around in 4 years' time, I think he could be in the squad. And that's about, I mean, you've already talked about him, so I didn't want to add too much to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's again, I obviously agree with the pick because I picked him myself. I just chose him at right back. So my first midfielder instead, and I'm in League One here, which was a little bit sneaky me going into League One for this, and that is Jack Rudoni, the Huddersfield Town midfielder. I just think he's top class again. He should probably be playing quite higher up in the Championship, but he got relegated with Huddersfield to move down into League One, meaning I could pick him and fulfill the selection requirement on that. For me, that was another one of those that's just a no-brainer. Perfectly good enough again to be playing in the Championship. I don't necessarily think he'll be a future England player at all, but I think he's one of those that you'd quite happily have in an England B or C team if, you know, they were proper England B and C teams and they weren't sort of age restricted or restricted to just non-league players like the England C team is.
Yeah, you say it's a no-brainer, but I didn't exactly use my brain and didn't think to include any of the relegated Championship teams. But I've also stayed in League One, and this is probably one of my less obvious shouts and one of the ones that I don't like as much. But I've gone for Barnsley's Adam Phillips, who had an excellent season despite having what was somewhat of a slow start by his standards. And he helped the Tykes once again to the playoffs. They obviously did lose over 2 legs to Bolton, but gave it a real good go. And he did score in that semi-final second leg. His Barnsley's player of the season, 11 goals and 7 assists. And yeah, I think he's versatile enough that you could play him across multiple areas in the midfield. But I also quite like the Radoni shout, and I'm just thinking now to myself, maybe I should have reassessed the situation. But that's not to take anything away from Phillips, because he is a very good player, and he's proved it over the last 2 seasons for Barnsley. And I think they could, with Dale Clark as their manager, be pushing on next season, and he could be the key man to help them do just that.
Interesting you say that. I mean, we'll end up doing a predictions video probably in the not too distant future once squads are starting to be a little bit more set. But I'm having Barnsley a lot lower in my predictions than you potentially are, than from what you were saying there. So I didn't really want to be picking one of their midfielders, even though they have got such a strong squad in that area. So my next midfielder, I'm going back up to the Championship, and I'm going for a player who, for me, it would be absolutely criminal if a Premier League team did not snap him up this summer, and that is Ben Sheaf. At Coventry City, I just think he's been absolutely outstanding on the ball in the past season or two, or even longer than that if you want to look further back than that. I mean, his on-the-ball stats are incredible, having some of the most successful dribbles in the league from midfield, having some of the best accurate pass percentage in the league. Everything about him just screams he is good enough for that step up, and nothing really seems to have fazed him so far. So therefore, for me, Ben Sheaf is just an obvious English midfield pick in this team from the Championship.
Another great one. I think Sheaf. I think Coventry have maybe not overperformed this season, but you look at their FA Cup run, and Sheaf especially was at the heart of almost everything that they did this season. So he's another one that is almost worthy of that step up to the Premier League. Just moving slightly further forward, almost playing not behind the striker, but as that attacking midfielder, or in the 10, I guess you can say. I've gone back into League Two for Isaac Hutchinson from Walsall. He's another one I think, Pete, you're smiling as well, so I'm hoping that you've gone for the same.
I have.
And he's another one who kind of picks. I think he picks himself, being from League Two, which I've already said is a harder one to try and pick players out from. I think he's been quite frankly immense this season. Ultra versatile. We've seen him play as a 10, a 6, and an 8, as well as on the left-hand side. And I think he's been ultra consistent over the last 2 seasons, but really taken his form up a notch this year. You obviously saw Walsall just miss out on the playoffs, but I think the reason they were even close to the playoffs was down to Hutchinson.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very much the reason that I've picked him as well. I mean, as a Lincoln City fan, I watched Walsall a good bit during the first half of the year when Freddie Draper was out on loan there, and I specifically made sure to seek out their highlights and extended highlights and even watch a game or two whenever Lincoln weren't playing. And as much as I was watching out for Freddie Draper up top, there was always this one player that just caught my eye in every single game, and that was the consistency at a top level. And that was Isaac Hutchinson. So for me, again, he was just one of those League Two players that before I even started fulfilling positions, it's like, okay, I need him in my team. So that's what he can bring. He can bring that kind of attacking impetus. Actually, he could be quite fluid in that attack as well. I mean, we've both got a sort of a number 10 role in here, I think, haven't we? But he can play really most of those midfield options, and you could potentially even put him a little bit further wide if you needed to. He's got some really good pedigree. He's shown what he can do in League Two. I think he's probably ready for a move up now into League One in sort of real life, not in our teams. But for now, he's a League Two player, so we could both choose him for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I was going to say it's a great shout, but that's because I've obviously put the same as well. I'll let you start with left winger, because I don't know if we'll be the same here or not.
Okay, I would like to think that we are, if I'm honest, because left wing, I have gone for Jack Clark from the Championship.
So we have gone the same.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm not surprised. He's another player that probably should again be making the step up to the Premier League this summer. He's perfectly good enough. He's got some incredible goal contribution stats from the Championship. And bearing in mind, that's in a Sunderland side who haven't exactly been the best in recent sort of months, especially with everything that's been going off at Sunderland and the lack of a manager, for example. But we won't go into that. That's probably a topic for a whole nother video. So yeah, honestly, Jack Clark, I just think he's an easy pick again, and probably one who could be making the step into an actual England squad in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I think Clark's one of the only Sunderland players who can kind of hold their head high after they finished 16th in the Championship last season. You obviously touched on his numbers, picked up 15 goals and 4 assists last term, and he was directly involved in 37% of their total goals. Season prior, he scored 9 and assisted 12, and I think he's more than proven in the Championship now that he's also ready for that step up to the Premier League. And I think that could be this summer, which will, well, quite frankly, harm Sunderland a fair bit, because like I said, he's been involved in 37% of their goals. You take that away, what sort of direction are they going to go in this window? But anyway, we'll move on. I'll go first with right winger, and I'm going to go, because I don't think you've got any more Championship shouts, have you? I think you might have used all of yours by now.
I have used all of my Championship.
There you go. Whereas I've still got a couple in the bag. I've got Morgan Whittaker from Plymouth. Where would Plymouth Argyle be without this man? League One.
In League One.
100% they'd be in League One.
It's as simple as that.
If he was to go. He's found his feet with the Pilgrims since joining from Swansea City 2 years ago. But he has always been highly thought of, representing England up to an under-20 level. But he's kind of reached new heights since being in the Southwest. Had Stephen Schumacher stayed for the whole season, then he could have had an absolute monster year. I think he finished with about 19 goals, but it might be 1 or 2 more or less either side of that. His production did drop towards the end of the season, but that's largely, I mean, Plymouth were the same. They had Ian Foster come in, which was a car crash totally, and then you had then finished season managerless. So I just think if he had a consistent manager, then Whittaker would be talking about as one of the players that all the Premier League clubs should be pursuing this summer. But I still think either way, he'll be making a move.
Well, I mean, look at the fact that Lazio wanted him for a report like £20 million in January, wasn't it? Like that doesn't just happen for no reason.
Especially at no offense to Plymouth, obviously, but at a club like Plymouth, who were playing in League One 2 seasons ago, to then have a player who you could sell for 20 million, that just shows his quality.
It would be incredible for them, and they would deserve it, because I like Plymouth. They do everything right. I think they're a club that I think many should aspire to be like, and Whittaker's kind of reaping the rewards of that. But because I don't have any Championship picks left, I could go for him. Which I'm now starting to regret my decision after you've sort of sung his praises so highly there. But instead, I've got to go for another League Two player. And for that, I have gone for former Accrington Stanley, sort of, technically still their player for another 12 days, I think, from when we're recording this, if we want to start being pedantic, but soon to be a Gillingham player. And I'll be honest, I was so surprised that this man stayed in League Two, and that is Jack Nolan. 45 games, 17 goals, 9 assists from the wing. I mean, need I say any more than that? How is he not making the step up to League One? Now, don't get me wrong, I get that he never really made an impact in League One with Accrington before, but he's now had a full season under his belt where he's been consistently performing to a top level. He's probably ready for that move up. And look, Gillingham are one of those sides who struggled for goals last season, so they're probably very glad that they've got somebody like Jack Nolan in there. And again, I just think for this English team, for a League Two player to have as many sort of goal contributions as that in the attack, I just wanted somebody like him in there. And you've kind of got that with Whittaker, and I've got the League Two version.
Yeah, just touch on Gillingham as well. Obviously, I think they've got 46 goals in 46 games last season, which kind of killed off any sort of playoff ambitions that they had. So I think that's a really good signing. And I think there'll be another one that could be up to, well, I know they're not in the same league as Barnsley, but they're another team that I think could be towards the pointy end of things next season. Moving on to striker, I think this is one of the most obvious shouts of the video. To get in a League Two player, it's got to be Macaulay Langstaff, who you're going to go with as well, because I think it's an easy one. I said originally when we thought of this idea, I'd wrote Alfie May down, and I kind of realised that it'd be quite hard to get a few more League Two players in. And Langstaff is such an obvious pick. He's taken a step up from the National League to League Two like a duck to water. Scored 28 times, golden boot in the process. He's 27. He's entering his prime years now. And I think I don't think he's reached his limit, and he could be another player that is on the move this summer. He's been linked with Swansea, which is fairly obvious given Luke Williams is there now. And I just think he's he's a great striker in the fourth tier, and it's just an easy pick to get a League Two player in there.
It is. I think when you think about the actual England squad and the striker that we've got, Harry Kane, he knows where the back of the net is. You can stick him in any team and he can score goals. Even for Tottenham, he can score goals. And now that is saying something, sorry Tottenham fans, if any of you are watching, but that's exactly what you need for an England squad as well. And Macaulay Langstaff was therefore the obvious selection for this. Now, I'll be honest, I put him in last because I'd sort of filled in the rest of the positions and then realised, okay, I've got to have a League Two player in. But then when you realise, okay, I've got to have a League Two player in striker, you don't even have to think about which player it is. You just know that you're going for Macaulay Langstaff purely because of how many goals he can get for you. And therefore, I just think he kind of complements this team quite perfectly. If you've got, for me, Jack Nolan and Jack Clarke on either wing, both are high assisters. And then you've got Macaulay Langstaff in the middle with Isaac Hutchinson in just behind. That's a dangerous, dangerous team. And that could probably also beat Luxembourg 7-0.
Going back to that, are we again? Great. Finally, manager, which I think you've got a League One and I've got a Championship left. Yeah. So I was going to say Paul Simpson, obviously Carlisle, because how many managers in the EFL won a World Cup? That being the Under-20 World Cup in 2017. Just wanted to get that in there. But I've actually gone for a man.
Reeks of desperation.
It's desperation time, isn't it? So I've gone for a man I actually think could be a future England manager. That being Middlesbrough's Michael Carrick. I just think he's got all of the credentials of an England manager. He's done really well with Middlesbrough. I know last season wasn't as good, but after the start that they had and all the injuries they had, I still think they can take a fair few positives, and they finished the season really strongly. Gareth Southgate, the last team that he managed before going to the international scene, was Middlesbrough. So that's another reason or not a reason, but it's a little link in there. And I just think Carrick's the type of guy that you look at and you're like, yeah, he could probably be a future England manager.
Well, I've gone for somebody who's already been an England manager and has already won at the top level with England. And that is Michael Skubala. I know what you might be thinking. He's not managed England before, is he? Well, technically, yes. England's futsal team. And they won competitions left, right and centre. An England university team as well, by the way. So, stick that in your Paul Simpson pipe and smoke it.
Anything to get Lincoln in this is.
All right, and then mentioning of Paul Simpson wasn't the only attempt to get Carlisle in. But look, Michael Skubala, he's already shown what he can do. And yes, it is for Lincoln. But in his first sort of proper permanent role in English football as a head coach, he went on an incredible 16-game unbeaten run. And that's what he showed as soon as he got a little bit of time on the training pitch. Fast, free-flowing football, able to score some absolutely incredible goals, the team, and also some incredible team goals that you just know were coached on the training ground, which is exactly what you want. He just seems like a really likeable character, somebody that will be able to make the step up sooner rather than later. I mean, he's already being linked with teams in the Championship, and it's to no surprise. I mean, again, as a Lincoln fan, I'm very, very glad that we've still got a hold of Michael Skubala, but I really wouldn't be surprised if he progresses quicker than what the football club do. He's a fantastic manager. And look, future England manager, who knows? Let's see where his career goes. But past England manager, yes, he is.
There you go. You've got a good way of getting Lincoln in there, so very well done. It's a bit better than me trying to get Simpson in there somehow. We'll put both of our lineups in on the screen now. Tell us who you think would win in an imaginary game between the two of them. Although quite a few
it kind of has to be imaginary considering they're the same players.
Yeah, quite a few of them will have to be wearing two shirts. Also, let us know in the comments who would be in your make-up EFL England 11. Please remember to like, subscribe, and also follow us on our socials, Real EFL Social on Twitter. And yeah, just keep on sharing, and also let us know what you'd like to see next time around.